Well, good morning, everybody. So thrilled to be here on, as Lee reminded us, the first Sunday in Advent and on this holiday weekend. We have been looking at improvisation from a variety of angles this month, and it seemed fitting that we devote at least one Sunday to musical improvisation, but we didn't want to be limited to just that. I pulled this service together with Pat Lorei, and we have invited several people to lend reflections and music. So if you have a bell, now's the time to get it. And you need to unmute yourself if you have a bell, and this is where we get this wonderful wild cacophony. With the sound of bells, we welcome stranger and friend to a time of mindfulness. Now, ring your bell. For the welcoming song, music was written by Hal Walker, and the words come from the Jefferson Unitarian Congregation in Golden, Colorado. And Nanci Reed will sing it for us this morning. Nanci?
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you are, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Thank you, Nanci. That was beautiful. With our opening words, Pat?
Hi. For the opening words, we're going to recite a reading called To Risk. Usually, when we're together in the sanctuary, we've done these responsively, and we thought we'd try something a little different today in that line. So I'll read the first line, and everybody else, stay muted, but read with Kelly the second bold line, and we'll have ourselves an old style responsive reading, sort of, okay? To laugh is to risk appearing the fool.
To weep is to risk appearing sentimental.
To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self.
To place our ideas, our dreams before the crowd is to risk loss.
To love is to risk not being loved in return.
To hope is to risk despair.
To try is to risk failure.
To live is to risk dying. And now Pat will perform some blues.
Okay, we're going to have a recorded band here, and we'll see if it syncs up, okay? You never know about Zoom.
One, two, one, two, three.
Woo, that was great. Thank you so much, Pat. To light our chalice, we have Nanci Lorei to lead that.
On the Brink by Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share.
Thank you, Nanci. And to lead our Universal Covenant, we have Candace, and it looks like Tella.
We are Unitarian Universalist people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands.
And the Bond of Union?
We unite ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, believing that we may thereby prove helpful one to another and promote the cause of truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
Thank you, Tella. That was beautiful. Christine, I think if you have little windows appearing on your screen, they show up as black boxes for the rest of us. If you can close them out or move them away from the PowerPoint screen, then we wouldn't get them. Perhaps, I don't know. It's the strange mysteries of Zoom.
I don't know. I will try. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, well then don't worry about it.
Sorry,
we tried.
everybody.
Hey, improvisation, right? I know, I wondered, should I interrupt the service to ask you about that? But,
I don't know what it is.
Well, don't worry about it then. So now is the time for our offertory, and you can always go to uuerie.org/donate, or you can mail a check made out to the UUCE. And when Christine gets a chance, she'll put that up on the screen. So our presentation this morning is a series of reflections and a conversation. Pat and I will start with a conversation about improvisation, and then we will do a musical improvisation together, followed by a reflection by Nanci, followed by an improvisation by Brian Lorei, followed by a reflection by Candace. And so, Pat, I'm going to let you kick the conversation off. Are you there, Pat?
There we go. Hey, figured it out. So what do we say about improvisation? The thrust of the service is about for our part, improvisation and music, but I always am intrigued by definition. And first thing I looked up was what's improvisation in engineering? Solve a problem with the tools and materials immediately at hand. And that's kind of a nuts and bolts way of looking at it, but it's true for the sciences, I guess. But how does improvisation, that doesn't really fit for the arts so much. How is it for the artistic side of improvisation? And where does improvisation start and leave off? And where does artistic start and leave off, or creativity, or imagination, or inventiveness? Where do they all overlap? And do you need to even know exactly?
Well, that's true. And I think a lot of us, if you learn music, if you study music classically, improvisation is not usually part of your training. You're taught to read music. That is part and parcel of learning your instrument. To read the music and to follow the music and to learn to interpret the music properly. And there is... I know that when I got to college, I felt like this is so strange that I can only play music that's set in front of me. And I was dabbling with composing music, but I couldn't improvise. I could compose music and then perform music that I had composed, but I could not actually just pick up my instrument and play something. And I had a composition teacher in college that said, well, you really ought to learn. And I said, well, I have absolutely no idea how I would learn how to improvise. He said, so this was way back in the 80s when we had those cassette tapes. He said, get 4 90-minute cassette tapes. And every day I want you to push record on your shoebox tape recorder and play until it clicks off at 45 minutes. And so fill a bunch of those tapes. And I did, and it was probably the most excruciating week I'd ever had because I had no idea what to play. And God bless that teacher. He took all 7 of those sides, 45-minute sides, and he listened to all of them. And then he played me back snippets that he felt were interesting. And believe me, there wasn't much that first week. But he said, well, yeah, actually, this is kind of interesting right here. And then you sort of reverted just to playing scales. Or this is a really good piece right here, but then you gave up on it and you started just playing arpeggios. And, but that he actually took the time to listen and believed that I had something to offer. And then it got easier. As I went along. That helped me just get better and better at it. And then I really realized that it's not just some like gift that you're just born with this ability to improvise. No, you've got to work at it like everything else.
But you do need to have, like you said, you have to have the foundation. You have to have enough basic skills in order to be able to take that and do something with it. And it's kind of like when kids are starting with lessons, and it's so hard to impart the idea that until you get to know something well enough that you don't have to think about it, you can have a scale and a C scale, and you don't have to think that A is 2 fingers. You just go there, and then you can do something creative with it. But until you get there, it's really hard to think that you're going to do something interesting.
That's true, but I also feel that we can overlook our basic instincts sometimes as well. I remember watching a little boy grow up, and he was considered language delayed. He was about 2.5, 3, and he really only had a couple of words, but he babbled. He babbled like nobody's business. He babbled entire stories. He would babble jokes that had punchlines. And it was extraordinary because while he was delayed true in learning those words and using words, he had completely mastered the musicality of a conversation. And he was able to replicate them in gibberish. And I think about that when I don't know if anybody's ever had, I mean, I love listening to kids who babble, and babbling, having conversations of babbling with children is one of the most delightful things you can do because you don't have to be constrained to coming up with words that make sense.
I guess you're right. I guess that's an interesting point. It really is. We were talking a little bit yesterday about where's the creativity with, say, symphony players as opposed to a jazz person or a folk person, or in the different genres of music. And if you're a symphony player, most of the creativity, it seems, lies with the conductor, and musicians need to play that as exactly as possible, in a very disciplined way. But when they're playing in a quartet, or when they're playing solo, or in most any other type of thing, they can use their creativity. Even if they're playing the same notes, there's all this variation that can be applied in some rubato things and dynamics and expression that can be added. That's where the creativity aspect would be for a lot of the professional symphony type players.
That's true. I think a great metaphor for that is sort of like it even corresponds to the dress of a symphonic player. Like there's not a whole lot of room for individual expression when you've got to wear a coat, a tuxedo, right? You've got a white shirt, you've got a white suit, you've got a very narrowly prescribed way to express yourself, and it is really but then again, with a classical symphony, you achieve transcendence because you have all these people playing the same thing and have honed their craft to this razor edge to be able to pull off this kind of technical feat that then the listeners can achieve this great transcendence. But it is totally different from somebody who's a jazz musician. I mean, even in a lot of folk traditions, it's kind of the relationship to individual expression is really, can be very narrowly prescribed. But at the same time, I think about like if you're playing Irish tunes or Appalachian tunes, there is this understanding that if you're a really good player, you don't play the tune the same way twice. But by the same token, you can't totally go off the deep end in how you play those tunes, or it's not folk music anymore. But I think jazz is that real expression where you have this huge latitude to let your freak flag fly, as they say.
Like in the swing era, it was the improvisation was very melodic and very chordally oriented, melody oriented. As it got into bop, it was way more chordally, and the wilder the chords got, the more harder it was kind of to listen to. And some of the things even though it sounds bizarre, some of the free-form jazz, but it's still got some kind of a form. It's still got a structure, although it might be hard to find, it's still there. And I guess it just depends where in that spectrum your taste lie.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear from our other speakers, but we did want to try again in the spirit of experimentation. It's so frustrating for musicians because Zoom doesn't really allow us to play at the same time. But what we thought we would do is have a conversation, a musical conversation. So Zoom won't really let us play at the same time, but we can actually play back and forth. So, all right. You ready, Pat?
Want to flip a coin?
You start.
All right.
Well, you let me have the last word. All right. Okay. Well, so when we were having this conversation about planning the service, I said, wow, we really need to talk to somebody who really loves to improvise while they cook. And Pat said, well, Nancy's all about that. So we're going to pass the Zoom screen over to her for her reflection.
When Pat asked me to talk about improvising and cooking, I had to kind of laugh. Pat cooks sometimes, and when he does, he likes to find a recipe and then follow it. I like recipes too, but I think of them more as kind of suggestions for a jumping off point. They're certainly useful for cook times and rough ideas of how much of things to add, but all you have to do is Google recipes for chili or pot roast or anything really, and you'll see dozens or hundreds of possibilities, none of them the same. So you know there's got to be some flexibility, right? So the downside, of course, to throwing in some of this and that, especially spices, is that if you hit on something great, duplicating it is next to impossible. I've had some success with build as you go meals, usually adding things we like mushrooms or garlic or onions, working around things I'm not fond of, like green peppers or cucumbers. Blech. Sometimes putting things together you like doesn't really work though. I remember when I was just living on my own in my early 20s, I was making tacos and decided to add something I liked, canned mushrooms. No. Some things just don't go together. A few years ago, we went to a wine tasting event. It was actually a game, and everyone was supposed to bring their favorite wine and also an appetizer. Well, I missed the memo about food pairing, or I really just didn't consider that a dry red blend and wonderfully ripe pineapple, while both are delicious, don't really go together. We came in last in the pairing competition. I got a new kitchen toy recently, so I've been doing some experimenting with pressure cooking and air frying, methods I haven't really used before. But a few cookbooks and some Google searches, and I'm off and running making things up. When I first met Pat and we were trying to win each other's affections, sometimes I would cook for us and he was always kind about his response. I told him he better be honest with me because if he says he likes something, he very well may get it again. Um, I do like to experiment with new foods and meals, and Pat, after several decades together, has finally stopped wondering out loud about the wisdom of trying out something new when we host dinner parties. After all, I already know not to put mushrooms in tacos or serve pineapple with dry red wine. Um, what could go wrong, really? Things mostly come out pretty well, and I haven't poisoned anyone yet. And if all else fails, we keep a menu handy for Chinese takeout.
Thank you, Nanci. That was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Uh, yes. So, as the palette, as the next order on our list of sort of the tapas platter of reflections that we have in today's service, we have an improvisation by Brian Lorei from Chicago all the way. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. I need to remember, I really liked what you said about the little bit of a childhood gibberish. So let's all remember to include some of that gibberish in every part of our lives, just a little bit. So.
That was amazing, Brian. Thank you. It's so good to hear you play. Wow. Yes. All right. So, to talk about improvisation in parenting, we've asked Candace Williams to lend us some of her ideas.
Thank you, Kelly. So parenting and improvisation go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, every day is something new. There's always a new stage or development that throws you for a loop. Nothing ever goes the way you planned, and kids are always full of surprises. Being able to improvise within any given situation is a must. And if you are able to harness the power of it, it can make parenting so much easier and enjoyable. I was a brand new parent almost 10 years ago, and I was pretty sure that I was prepared for anything that a 9-pound little baby, okay, she wasn't that little, could throw at me. I've really taken care of children since I was 12 years old. And so I figured what could be hard about raising a little baby or a toddler or a child or a preteen. Although I will admit that my outlook is a little limited and I'm definitely not ready for the next stages. The first night is really quite a challenge. Nobody can really prepare you. Waking up every 2 hours is a complete shock. There are also so many things they don't tell you about being completely and totally and absolutely responsible for a human life. It is sink or swim. Luckily, I have many supportive people in my life who have been and continue to be helpful while I try to figure all of this out. So really, what has helped me the most? Being able to accept that I have no idea what I'm doing. You can never be prepared for parenting. It is constantly trying something new, and if that doesn't work, then trying something else. That's really what improvisation is, isn't it? The ability to do something without any preparation. And let me tell you, Tella, Emmy, and Lulu continue to hone my parenting improvisation skills. I can make up songs for just about any occasion. I make up all kinds of games. I know all the best fart jokes. And most importantly, I have learned how to really listen and how to be fully present in a situation where I am at a complete loss as to what I should be doing next. Who knew children from the same parents and raised in the same household could be so different? Improvisation in parenting happens when I realize that my agenda is not working. So then that's when I go for broke. The ability to be flexible in any given situation is not just valuable as a parent, but it's valuable in all aspects of everyday life. The more that I am willing to acknowledge I am not always right, and that there are endless ways to get the results that I desire, the easier I make it on myself. Here are some examples. A toddler is in the middle of a meltdown, in the middle of aisle 6 in the grocery store. Your preteen has just stomped upstairs for the 3rd time this week in a row due to the fact that she doesn't want to take a shower because she just took one last week. And now there's milk all over the floor because your 6-year-old dropped the brand new container of milk. These situations can all be turned into improvisational moments. All you have to do is take a deep breath and go out on stage. If I stay open to the idea of improvisation in the moment, I start singing a song about grocery shopping to my toddler. I do something silly to make my preteen laugh, or I make a game out of helping my 6-year-old clean up the mess. I am not only able to diffuse the situation, but I also find a meaningful way to connect with my audience of one. I still read parenting books because knowing what to expect during certain developmental stages is incredibly useful. However, my favorite piece of advice will always be, expect the unexpected and make them laugh. Laughter really is the best medicine and always helps get to the root of the problem. Pro parenting tip, they're usually hungry or tired. When I remember to practice parenting improv, I am amazed at how well the girls respond and how much closer we all continue to grow as a family, especially now that I cannot pick up said child and make them do what I want at any given moment. What I would give back to go back in time to talk to my younger self. Although judging from how things are going with my oldest, who is just like me, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't listen anyway. The more we are able to really listen to one another, throw our agenda away, and improvise throughout life, the better we'll all be, because no one really has the answers.
That was fabulous, Candace. Wow. Basically relating the ability to improvise both with Candace and with Nanci comes from basically a deep humility, and I think it's humility in the best sense of the word, not humility that's like self-debasing, but a humility that believes I am fallible, but I am also capable. I am this one little speck of a star in the great sky full of millions of stars, but I'm still a beautiful star. in the sea of all of those stars. So that's really, really, really beautiful. So now we move to a bit of improvisation on our own and have some conversations. Christine, can you bring up the PowerPoint? So what we're going to do is make use of the breakout rooms, and you will go back one. There we go. Aha. So you will get sent to a breakout room where you'll be with a few other people, and we want you to have a conversation, a brief conversation, only about 4 minutes or so, about when do you plan not to plan? When do you do it? Do you do it in relationships and with your family, or on vacations? Do you do it at work, or any aspect of your life? And let everybody in the group share a little something. Then what we want you to do is, as a group, compose a short blessing. Don't overthink it. This blessing can be just a few phrases, no more than one sentence. And it does not need to use the word improvisation. And we will use a collection of these blessings for our closing words at the end of the service. And in the spirit of improvisation, if anybody wants to share a doodle or a sketch or something like that, we'll figure out a way for you to get to share that at the end of the service as well. So we're going to give you 5 minutes. And if you have any questions or you're in the breakout room, just have one of your people leave the breakout room, and we'll be able to help you out, and then you can return to your breakout room. And Pat will play an improvisation for our meditation music for that. And if you haven't sent in your blessing from your breakout room, you can text it to me or send it to me via the chat box. And it's important to just let us know how you're all feeling. This is a time that we sort of check in with each other. It's important not to respond directly to anybody's sentiments that they're putting out in the chat box for joys and concerns. And it's just important for us that we are all bearing witness to where everybody is at in these very challenging times.
Just roll with it. It will turn out better that way.
Be ready at the drop of a hat. Just go with the flow.
Be resourceful when the unexpected happens.
When all your plans don't work, improvise.
Move forward with love.
Sometimes no plan is the best plan of all.
May your days allow you to explore and listen.
When in doubt, reboot.
Be flexible and practice self-care.
Every problem has a solution.
May we be pleasantly surprised by our own strength when up against the unplanned.
Be open.
Move forward with joy and imagination.
thinking of you, wishing peace. All right, so we have the extinguishing of chalices. And Christine, can you bring up that slide for us? And Nanci, can you lead that?
As flame is to spirit, so spirit is to breath, and breath to song. Though we extinguish the flame in this sanctuary, may we tend it in our hearts until we meet again.
And Pat has the postlude. And during the postlude, if you have any announcements, you can put them in the chat box. you, Pat and Brian. That is a great problem solving that you folks did, again, to be able to play music together. It was nice to be able to see both of you in the same Zoom screen. And no small technical feat of pulling that all together.
That was improvisation in itself, in that the original plan was that we were supposed to be all here together, and because of the massiveness of COVID in Chicago, it just wasn't possible. So the next best thing.
Yes, well, so why don't we bring up that last slide? We've got a bunch of people to thank. I want to thank Pat for pulling this service together and for all of the work that he did on it. I thank Nanci and Candace for their wonderful reflections, for Nanci Reed for leading the welcoming song for the first time. It was great to hear your voice. And to Annette and Diane and Clyde for their help as the digital ushers, but a special thanks to Dixie and Christine, who put in the yeoman's job and rehearsed with us for over an hour yesterday to try to make sure things would go as smoothly as they did. We couldn't have done the service this way if it wasn't problem solving with them. So we invite everybody to come back next week to hear Reverend Christina Church, our minister, with her sermon, The Holy and the Broken. And all of our services are archived on YouTube, so you can find them there. So we will have some social time in the breakout sessions. Those can start now unless there are no announcements.